their consumer products. So it's not everything. It is only a subsection of products. So what is important to understand is what is happening today. And as we're going to find out what is not happening today and why they're bringing this in. So today, importers are required to maintain their compliance certifications for the applicable products and provide them when requested by customs or regulatory authorities. So it's a reactive situation today. Doesn't mean that they don't have to have the certificates today. Yes, they do. But they don't have to give them to anyone unless they're requested. Now, part of the problem being is people are not doing it. They're not holding them. So what the government in the US is doing is they're saying, okay, from the 8th of July, we want you to prove that information on import. So it's now gone from reactive to active. So are these certificates and certifications new? No, they're not. It's how they're presented to the US government that is new, and that is what we call the e-filing. So going forward, the e-filing is presenting those certificates that should, in reality, already be in place. As we said, they're not new. So we're going to be more proactive about this. It is coming, the 8th of July. That's not far away. We need you to know your products, the relevant regulations for the CPSC, and what data, and that's very important, the word data, you're going to need to provide with your shipments to prepare to go live in July. So this is what we're talking about. It's now active. No longer do the importers just need to hold it in case it's needed. It is needed on import, and if it is not available, the goods cannot go through customs. So that's the change. The change is only how it is presented to the government. So who could be impacted? The regulation applies to many finished consumer products imported into the US. The word finished is very important. Components are generally not part of it, okay? Pieces are not part of it. It is finished consumer goods into the US. What sort of products? We're talking a lot of apparel and footwear, a lot of children's toys and children's products, some furniture and home goods, some sporting goods. Some people call them push carts, so children's strollers and juvenile products, bicycles and bicycle helmets, imitation jewellery, and certain household goods. As we go through the presentation, we'll show you how to exactly identify what products. From our customer perspective, who's mainly impacted? The manufacturers are absolutely impacted because they need to carry out the certification. The importers of record are impacted because, in theory, and I use the word theory, they are responsible to have the certifications. But it's a matter of the chicken or the egg, which comes first. And in this case, what comes first is the manufacturers, the retailers, the distributors, the e-commerce sellers. And I'll keep referring back to our e-commerce sellers because I have no doubt a lot of you good folk who are on this call today are e-commerce sellers. And one of your big questions will continuously be, well, my customers in the US can't do all this, so how does it work? And we'll talk a lot about that as we go through. And the vendors on the e-marketplaces, okay? So they're all impacted. Now, what's the key message here? The customers importing consumer goods into the US should evaluate whether their products within their portfolio may be applicable, okay? That is the very first start of this whole process. Are your goods under this requirement? And we'll show you how to find out. But what does it mean? What is this e-filing? Now, the first thing I want to say is DHL or your customs broker undertakes the e-filing, okay? The physical process of e-filing is undertaken by DHL or your broker. You cannot do it, okay? It's got to be done by the broker. And there is various ways of how the information can be given. Okay. Now I'll refer to the product registration identifiers. And we'll go into more detail shortly, but a product identification registry is for products that are very commonly imported into the US. I'll give an example. Say you manufacture mattresses, but you only have a range of 5 different mattresses. Okay, it would make a lot of sense to use a product registry. That means they're registered once, and you can use the same certification over and over and over, and you have to produce only 3 data elements. Okay, very simplistic once it's set up in the system, and we'll show you how. The secondary way is the full certificate data and the 7 elements to that data. Okay, or send a copy of the consumer price certificates or the goods children's certificate. Okay, that can suffice instead of the 7 data elements. Essentially, those certificates have those data elements on them. Or the last thing is disclaimers. A disclaimer means that your product fits into the category of requiring the e-filing and the certification. However, there's an exemption for that particular product, and we'll show you how to identify that. And if you fall under that, you need to provide the disclaimer identification numbers. Okay, so quite important. And this information needs to be on the commercial invoices, or you can send it as a supplementary file. And it's got to be uploaded at the time of shipment creation. So when you're creating a My DHL Plus or whatever system you're using to go to DHL, if your products fall under this, you need to put certain information on the invoices. And we'll show you shortly how to do that. Okay. Now, whether you're using PLT or physical documents, which you hand to the courier, they need to be, that declaration needs to be on those documents. So we can transmit it. We being DHL, we would transmit that to our US colleagues to perform the customs clearance and the e-filing. Okay, very, very important. Okay, if you're using the registry, and that's for the products that are consistently going, a small range, but that's the majority of product you send. The responsible party. Now, this is an interesting wording here. The responsible party can be the importer, or it also makes a lot of sense, especially in the case of business to consumer type goods, that the manufacturer can be the responsible party. They can create a business account on the CPSC's website, and there's a link there for the website. And what you can do is you preload your certificates in there. Okay, so therefore it's a once-off. Perfect for repetitive products. Now, to have these certificates, you need to understand what are the rules. What product requires what certification? What product requires what sort of testing? Okay, that needs to be clearly understood. So therefore, you need to ensure the accuracy of that testing, the manufacturing processes, and the citation data where applicable. Okay, so this really is the responsibility, I'm going to say, the manufacturer or seller, to have that information to see if their products fall in there. Now, technically, the importer of record is legally responsible for the certificate accuracy. Okay, technically. If you're doing business to business, very much so. But as I mentioned, I assume there's a lot of people on this call who do business to consumer. You cannot expect your end consumer, generally an individual, to have all this information and the certification, so on and such forth. So the responsibility falls back to yourselves as a manufacturer and or seller to produce that information, to have it available. Right? The IOR or yourselves need to know what are the requirements, okay? And they're based on the flag of the HTS codes. So we'll go through the process very shortly, but you've got to know what your HTS or HS tariff item is for the product to be able to identify what certification is required or not required. Now, incomplete or missing data. I've been asked this question a lot. Mike, what happens if the product turns up and there's no certificates, there's no data? What will happen is DHL in the US will contact the receiver or the importer and say, please, can we have this information? If the information is not available, it'll go through what we call the RTO process, okay, the return to origin. Now, the US will contact, in this case, DHL Indonesia and say, we're very sorry, but this shipment doesn't have the required data. It needs to go through the CPSC e-filing. Can you contact the shipper to have it available? Now, if it's not available, the goods will be returned. Unfortunately, we cannot clear the goods through customs without it. Okay, let's work our way through the requirements. So that was an overview we've just had, quite high level. Let's get into some more detail now. How does the testing and the certification process work? How do we obtain these certificates of conformity, commonly known as the GCCs or the Children's Product Certificates, the CPCs? Where does it all start? Well, it starts by understanding what is the HTS code. Now, just for your benefit, everything in blue here are hyperlinks. We will make this chart pack available for you, okay? Because there's a lot of good information here for you. So the very first thing you need to do is to classify the products to the 10-digit US HS level. If you don't know it, DHL has a very good product called MyGTS that can support you in doing that. However, first thing you need to do is check your HTS and check the e-filing list. There are some 600 US HS codes that fall under the e-filing responsibilities, okay? If your HS code is not on that list, you need to do nothing else. You don't need to put anything on the documents. You do nothing, you just ship, okay? However, if your HS code is on the list, you need to move to the next stage. You need to go into the CPSC's regulatory robot and the resources website to understand what certification is required, what testing is required, okay? Unfortunately, we cannot do that for you. You have to do that yourself, okay? Now, once you understand what testing and certification is required, you're then going to make sure that is carried out, that testing is carried out, okay? Only when all that is done and the testing is completed that the tester needs to make the applicable certifications available, okay? That's either in a printed form or in the data elements we're talking about, the 7 data elements, okay? Only then can you ship the product. Now, this is not a 5-minute process, obviously. This will take time. Once again, it is assumed this should be in place already because today, the certification is still a regulatory requirement. All that is changing on the 8th of July is how it is submitted, okay? I suspect that the government has made these changes is because a lot of people do not have the certification in place, okay? That's just my opinion. Now, we talked about the product registry. And once again, the product registry is all about reusable, repeatable products, okay, to save you having to go through the whole process over and over again. Very similar process to start off with. Find out what your HS code is. And as I mentioned, the DHL MyGTS can support you in doing that. Check the list. If it's not on the list, move on, everyone happy. If it is, you need to determine what testing is required. You need to create an account with the US CPSC, okay? Then on that account, you register your products, okay? And once you've done that, that makes life a lot easier. You still have to send some data but it's much, much limited to compared to the 7 data elements. So that's how you use a product registry. This is an important one here. As I mentioned earlier, your product may well be on the HS list, but for whatever particular reason, it's an exempted. So you need to go through the process to see if your goods are exempted, and if they are, what is the code for that exemption? Because you need to know that code to put on the documents. So the process starts off the same again. Classify your product. HS level to the 10-digit. Check it against the list. If it's on the list, make sure the testing is there if required, but look at the disclaimers. Now, I'm actually going to call this up so you can see what I mean here. If we go to, I think it's quite important you at least have a look at this here. I just got the wrong one. Here we go. Okay. So this is the interface requirements, what we talk about, the base codes, and so I'll just go down to some level here for you. Okay. If your goods fall under a particular category, you can claim an exemption. So all the exemptions start off with what we call a base code, okay, which is a 3-digit. But where the meat of the sandwich here is the full code. If your product, say for instance, your HS code fitted under the category for particular animal drugs, and you look at this here, you can see here under 085003, the product is a finished animal drug product subject to FDA. Now, this is a good point in itself. If a product is required for FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, you don't need to do e-filing, but you still have to do the FDA, okay? So you're not out of it altogether. And you're going to make sure you meet the definition. So to avoid doing the e-filing, you need to have these codes on the documentation, okay? And like I said, if it's a product that requires Food and Drug Administration, no e-filing is required. If we just go down to some others here, the product is a cosmetic. It's for processing in the cosmetic products. Okay, it's exempted under that code. Okay. Once again, that code absolutely has to be on the documents. Okay, to claim that disclaimer. So therefore, you will not need to do certification or testing or anything else. So this is a very important document to have a look at. Okay, I'll just go back. Now, assuming you've went through the process, you've got the HS code, you've checked what testing is required, you've undertaken the testing, you've got the certification. How do you get it across to DHL, and how does DHL get it to the CPSC? Now, we'll start off again. Once again, if you've used the product registry, meaning your products are pre-registered with the CPSC, okay? This is the products we talked about, the common products that you're sending. Now, you only need to provide 3 data elements. Now, if it's a one-line invoice, you can supply it in the remarks level. The certifier ID, the product ID, and the version ID, because that will link it to what you have on the product registry. So that's if it's just a one line. If it's a multi-line shipment, okay, and they are registered, you can put that information at a line level on the DHL invoices, My DHL Plus, okay? Now, if your product's not registered, not the end of the world. This is for, you have multiple products going all the time, okay? This is where you have to supply 7 data elements, Okay. Now, we've made sure if it's a single line invoice, you can provide those 7 data elements in the remarks field. Or if they're multiple lines, you can provide them in the invoice line level. Now, I have no doubt your question will be, what are these 7 data elements? Okay. Now, for the product registered products, it's just these lines here. Okay. Now, the 7, you need your SKU, your product description, the citation code, and that will come from the CPSC side, when it was manufactured, where it was manufactured, when the product was tested, the name and address of the test laboratory, and who's the contact for this information. Okay. A lot of information. If you have certificates, you don't need to do the 7 data elements. You do not need to put it on the invoices, but you do need to include these certificates as part of your document batch of documents to DHL. Okay, via PLT, paperless trade, or by physically handing them to the courier. Okay, so that's your option 4. Now, we talked about the disclaimer, exemption for want of a better word. If your product falls under an exemption, you need to clearly show that. Okay, you've got to show the disclaimer, intended use code 130006, whatever the case may be. If that information is not on there, no one is any of the wiser, and the shipment will be held up wanting either the 7 data elements or a disclaimer. Okay, it needs to be on the documents. Now, if it's B2C, as you could imagine, contacting the end customer, they would have no idea of this information. So it's got to come from your good selves. Now, what we've done is, we've run various webinars and questionnaires. We've got some frequently asked questions that we've seen come up. So we'll go through them first. You don't need to be involved just yet, Tiffany. We'll leave you till the Q&A at the very end. I'm hoping a lot of these FAQs will answer your questions that you may have already. So let's go through them. What is the CPSC filing? It's a new requirement mandating that importers of regulated consumer products electronically submit the certificates or the data to customs. It's as simple as that. And DHL undertakes the physical filing on your behalf. Who's responsible for providing the certificate data? By the letter of the law, as I've said, it's the importer or the consignee's responsibility to provide that data to the broker to clear the goods correctly. Being in the real world, that data content needs to come from the seller shipper, okay? If it's not, we'd have to get it from the importer, and it may or may not be available. What must be submitted? 7 data elements, or the 3 product registry elements, or the disclaimers, okay, or the certificates, okay? That is what must be submitted. We will submit it for you, but you need the suppliers of that information. Why should you use the product registry? Now, the product registry, it's really efficient, and it's a scalable method for complying with the e-filing requirements. Using the registry reduces the amount of data that you need to provide to clear the goods. It speeds up the whole process, okay? And it eliminates the need for every shipment to supply data elements or certificates. It's a great way to go. Does every CPSC related product require e-filing? A product requires e-filing only if the HTS code applies, okay? Some 600 codes. If it's not on the list, e-filing is not required. Product may still be regulated, but it doesn't require, okay? So essentially, you don't need to worry too much about it. How do I know if my product requires the CPSC e-filing? Check the website. Get your HS code to 10-digit US. DHL My GTS can support that for you. Check it against the list that's here on this hyperlink for you. If it's on the list, you need to comply to it. What about samples? Are samples required? Very common question. The answer is no. Samples are not required for e-filing. However, we must ensure that the samples are validated samples. And generally, samples need to be marked with indelible ink or mutilated, things of that nature. So be aware, the product may require e-filing, but if it's a sample, it doesn't. But you've got to make sure that it actually complies to the sampling criteria. Now, if you're returning goods to the US, so originally they shipped from the US, but now you're returning to them, and that HS code could fall under it. The reality is no. All you need to do is produce evidence that the goods originally were exported from the US, and they can go back into the US. There's no e-filing, there's no CPSC required, okay? Ifs. This is another interesting one. Sent person to person, as we call it, C to C, consumer to consumer. Are they subject to e-filing? The answer is no. But be aware, Customs and Border Security in the US look at these very closely. They must be from one individual to another individual. If there's a company sending it or a company receiving it, it is not considered a gift. If you send 10 items, that was probably not going to be considered a gift, okay? So it's a little bit like the samples. Gifts are not applicable for CPSC. However, you have to ensure that it meets the gift criteria. Very, very important. Do these requirements apply to shipments of all values? If so, do the applicable shipments require a separate entry? Okay. Regardless of whether the value is 1 cent or $1 million, if it falls under the 600 HS codes, yes, you require e-filing. Okay. Value does not play a part in the discussion. Okay. Now, at DHL Express, we offer what we call an informal clearance process for shipments under $2,500. Okay. It's a much more simplistic process, but generally it's done at what, let's call it a batch level. We can clear 100 shipments at one time. However, if it requires e-filing, we can't do that. It has to be pulled out and handled separately because it requires its own e-filing, okay? So it's no longer eligible. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is DHL, for shipments under, let's say, 5,000, will represent you as the importer of record, okay? So we will do that for you. However, for the informals, we have to do a separate clearance. Over 2,500, we have to do a separate clearance anyway. It's called a formal entry. Now, is there any cost? Yes. Shipments cleared via separate entry, assist with the CPSC submission, do require and will incur a permits and licensing fee as per our standard schedule. Okay, so be aware of that. There is some cost associated with that. Can you do it yourself? The e-filing. The answer is no. It's got to be done by the customs broker who is clearing the goods. Generally, that's going to be DHL Express. If you, decided your business model, you want to use an outside broker, you can certainly do that, but they will have to do the e-filing, okay? It can only be done by the customs broker at the time of clearance. And unfortunately, what happens if my shipment arrives without the CPSC information? Any shipment missing the required information at time of arrival may be delayed. Let's assume it will be delayed and it will be held for the missing information. Well, generally, by process, contact the US receiver for the information. If they don't have it, we will go back to the origin, your goods sells, for that information. And if it's not available, we'll have to return the goods. So what are the key messages we're looking for here. And how can you avoid delays from the 8th of July? Registering, great idea to go, okay? It's easy enough to do if your products are repetitive. If not, make sure you have the data elements available. And once again, that's assuming you've identified your goods fall under it and the testing has been done. Okay, that's very important. It has to have been done. 7 data elements and or the certificates, okay? And don't forget, check the disclaimers. Your products may fit outside the requirements, and which is fantastic, but you still got to provide some data on the commercial invoice. Make sure your HTS codes are correct, okay? Check them against the flag list. Make sure your product testing and documentation are correct and current. That's very, very important. If the product is over $5,000, DHL will require what we call a power of attorney, and the goods will be cleared in the importer's name. Okay, we do not operate as an importer of record for goods over $5,000. Okay, so and for that to occur, we need what we call a power of attorney. So key messages: becomes mandatory from the 8th of July. That's 4 days away. A lot of consumer goods will be impacted. Importers have long been responsible. I've mentioned this several times. This is not new. They've always been responsible for maintaining the compliance certificates. Reality is they probably haven't, and that's why they're doing this. The primary change is that it's now going to be available at the time of clearance. Customers should begin, please, you should have begun months ago, evaluating whether your products are ready to go. Okay. Review the filing site, evaluate whether it's a better idea to register or not. We can help you understand the changes. However, we can't actually do it for you. We'll do the filing, no problem, but we can't do the testing. We can't tell you whether your product is applicable under it or not. Only you can. You have the product knowledge. We don't have that, okay? I mentioned my GTS several times, so I thought I'd put it up here. Okay, it's a great, easy to use tool of DHL's, not only for the purposes of CPSC, but in general. Okay, it's a great tool. This can help you get your US HTS code down to that 10-digit level. Okay, if you're not familiar with it, please talk to your account manager and they will support you getting that set up. Okay. There's some great external links here. There's links all through this proposal. These are the ones, to help you do your job. Now, I'm going to go back to Tiffany for support here. Yep. I assume we had hundreds of questions, Tiffany. We don't have a lot of time left, but let's see how many we can get through to support our customers here.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. So we have a question from Iqbal. So in the GCC or CPSC, one of the mandatory data element is a testing laboratory. Could you please clarify which entities or third-party laboratory in Indonesia are officially recognized and accepted by the US CPSC to conduct this testing? Additionally, can a manufacturer internal testing facility be used if it meets certain criteria, or is it must be strictly be independent third-party laboratory? It's a good question, actually.
It's a brilliant question. I asked that myself, actually, back to my US colleagues. I said, is there a list of certified testing laboratories? The answer is no, which I was quite surprised and quite happy about. So in answer to that gentleman's question is, it just has to be a testing authority, okay, or a testing company. Can it be internal testing? I might need to get a little bit more clarity on that for you, if you don't mind. I'll take that on notice. But it's important, with the certificates that, they put their company name on them and they stamp them. Okay. Yeah. So good question. I think I've answered about 85% of that question. I just want to check on whether it can be done internally. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So actually, this is a question from Denpasar from Bali. So I believe my customer in Denpasar, especially actually in Indonesia, ship directly to individual consumer in the US through platform like Shopify, Etsy, or Amazon. Actually, I believe you also already answered in the frequent question. So how do CPSCF filling requirement apply for this B2C shipment, and who is typically responsible for this compliance?
Okay. Very common question. I think I had answered it, but I'll go through it again because obviously I wasn't clear enough. Okay. The reality is, by law, the individual is responsible who receives the goods, but that's not practical. Okay, let's be realistic here. The information has to come from the manufacturer and or seller. It can't come from anywhere else. The individual will have no clue of the testing. Okay. Think of the practicalities here. That information is required at time of customs clearance. In my view, it can only come from the manufacturer seller. Okay. To put the onus on the importer, it's not a practical situation, especially in the consumer market. Okay. So I hope I've clarified that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We have other question. Do we need 6-digit codes or 10-digit HTS?
Yes. 10. 10. Yes.
Yeah.
No, this question was asked of me yesterday from some people in Korea. So I'm on top of this one. Yep. 10.
10. Okay.
Because the listing on the CPSC site is at 10-digit. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. The other question, actually, I think already answered for shipper individual to individual, which is still mandatory for CPSC filling. So how this they can compliance.
I'll clarify a little bit further on that one. Okay, from an individual to an individual, no, it is not required. We put that under the area of gift. Now, if an individual is selling to an individual, that's a different story.
Mhm.
If it is a commercial transaction, it will require the e-filing, 100%. If it is a gift, no, it doesn't. But we got to make sure it is a real gift. Okay.
Okay, that's clear enough. So the other question is, will the due process apply for good arriving on 8 July or sent on or after?
Okay, good question. It's a little bit like the IEPAs and all those things, the tariffs we've had before. It will be applicable from the time and date of clearance. So from the midnight on the 8th, when I say midnight, 1 minute past midnight, from the 7th to the 8th, it is required. So you may well ship on the 7th, but if it doesn't get there till the 8th, you have to do the filing. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Another question, I think it's the same. What about small batch manufacturer policy? It will be the same, I believe, right?
That falls under the B2C small batch. If there's a commercial transaction, it's applicable. Yes.
Applicable. Okay. Okay, other question is, okay, from Kak Lomar. When the shipment is delayed as it is required to complete the CPAC or either 7 data element, do you as custom expecting any backlog for that? Or will be occur at US major hub and do miss 7 days good RTO for this transition period?
Okay. First of all, we've put the resources in place in the US to support it. We know there will be a reasonable percentage of shipments that do not have the required information. So the best way I can say right now is we're ready to go. DHL is ready to go. We have the people, we have the systems, we have the process in place. If everyone decides not to send the data elements, yeah, those shipments will be delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to be very honest. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question is, what if the shipment is DDP? Sometimes because the receiver maybe not aware with this regulation. So um, the shipper is responsible for this, right?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm a real believer in Incoterms. In the case of the CPSC, the Incoterms play no part.
Yeah.
It is the goods. It's all about the goods. If the goods fit under the criteria for testing and e-filing, they've got to be done, whether it's DDP, DAP, FCA, X-Works, it's irrelevant. Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, there's another question coming again. So if we are going to send finished goods which fall into one of the 600 HTS, I mean 600 HTS codes, but the goods are only for product development, does this regulation apply to those products?
The products are for what? Sorry, I quite missed that, Tiffany.
So if we are going to send finished good, which fall under that included on that 600 HTS codes that you mentioned, that's requires CPSC filling. But this product is for development.
Oh, okay. Go through the disclaimers. Okay, I can't do that for you, but my memory tells me. Don't send me to jail if I get this wrong, but my memory tells me if it's for product development or testing, there is a disclaimer there. Okay, go through your disclaimers. Very, very important and good question. Yep.
Okay. Another question is, okay, so our goods have arrived at destination, but the lab test results are not out yet, not published yet. What should we do? So if that case happens.
I'm going to be direct here. Don't ship them until you have the information. If they arrive and you don't have it available yet, there's a problem. They cannot be cleared because the filing cannot be done. Now, under US regulations, there's a maximum, I think it's 10 days from arrival. After 10 days, they've got to go. When I say got to go, they've got to go back. Yeah.
Okay, it's very strict, yeah.
And I don't want to be brutal here, but I do not wish for DHL to be a warehouse for these. Yeah.
Okay, another question is about dangerous goods are not listed on the CPSC guidance. So it doesn't mean we don't need this, right? We don't need this.
No, it's irrelevant. It's about the HS code. Yeah. Whether they're dangerous goods or not does not. If it's on the list, it requires it unless it fits under a disclaimer.
Okay, so there's another question. If one of element can complete, it will impact whole to all shipment in the US. Like if they have like two items and then one item is need to CPSC filing, and it will impact to the other one, right? So you need to.
Correct. We can't cut open the box. No.
Yeah. Okay, another question. If using the registry, can you clarify the information that needs to be loaded to meet the deadline of 8 July? Can this be brief?
Okay. I'm not an expert in the area of the registry, to be honest, but it will require all your testing data to be in the system. Okay. And they will come back with the required information. It'll give you the registry number and things of that nature, which has to be on the documents. That was part of the 3 data elements. So being realistic, you might be close to missing the boat, so to speak, at the moment. But I would, so initially you probably need to do the 7 data elements, but I would do it in parallel and start the registration process to make your life easier going forward. The sooner you do these things, the better.
Right. Yeah. Another question. Can you again clarify about exemption, how and when it can be used? Maybe show an example. The exemption.
Okay, that's the disclaimers. Okay, I did show an exemptions file. I called that up. Once you get the hyperlink, you can go in there and have a look for yourself. Okay, there's a whole bunch of exemptions. Okay, I can't determine that for you. You're the person who knows your product, not me. Yeah.
Okay, another question. When register on CPSE, we need to fill 7 elements in the stage. When we fill in when we fill in without information of the product taste, date, and testing laboratory, because the testing is still in the progress, is it acceptable to leave those filled blank and update them later?
No, it's incomplete. If the data is incomplete, it's unusable. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. That's clear enough, I think. I think that's all for the questions so far. For the customers who want to raise the question again, please feel free. I think we still have like 5 minutes or 7 minutes left. Okay, I think maybe we need to emphasize again while we're waiting for the question. So first thing first, you have to classify your HS code, right? You need to know what is your HTS codes, and then you can see the list of the list HS code that require the CPSC, and then after that you can check to the CPSC robot.
Yeah, perfect. You're my star student, Tiffany.
And another
So yes,
question.
classify your products. Check the e-filing listing. Go through the robot to show you what testing that product requires. And different products require different testing, obviously.
Yeah.
Then just check to see if any disclaimers are available. Yep. And as I said, when you get a copy of this chart pack, these are all hyperlinked here for you, and it will show you how to see if there's a disclaimer. So it's a big file there. Work your way through it. Yep.
Okay, that's a question again coming. Garment sample that are exempted from CPSC filling are typically marked samples or mutilated samples. Could you please advise whether prototype sample are also excluded for the CPSC filling requirement?
Once again, checking the disclaimers. I'm not 100% sure, but even if it's a prototype, it has to be in a format where it is not saleable. Okay. Please check the disclaimers. I'm not an expert in that area, but my high level knowledge says it sort of falls into the area of sample and needs to be in a non-sellable fashion. Yeah.
Okay, another question is, so if there's no testing yet, we still need to create an account. I think it's important, to create an account first.
Well,
right?
Well, okay. If you haven't done any testing, like you can create an account, yes, but it's just going to sit there being dormant until you do the testing and you can load the information. So yes, probably a good idea if you're in the process, get it registered. Well, get your company registered in the system. So when the testing is done, you can load the data. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good. There's another good question actually. Does the certificate that already registered can be used for another shipment or upcoming under same SKU, or certificate only applied for one-off?
Okay, the certificate is required at an SKU level. Okay, so consequently, the answer to that question is It can be used every time that SKU goes into the US, but it cannot be used for another SKU. No.
Okay. Okay, that's a good question. I think we're coming to the end. This last question, I think, from Ryan. If registry cannot be done in time for the 8th June, we would need to use 7 points data submission. Will the
I
link?
suggest you do, yes. I think you're getting too close to the finish
Yeah.
line and you may not get there. So,
Yeah.
put the 7 elements, please.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, I think that's all for the question. Yes, I'd like to thank you everyone for taking the time for joining us today. A very special thankful to you, to Mike Atwood for sharing the expertise, providing insight to the upcoming this CPSC filling requirement. So we have today's session has given you a clear understanding of what these regulatory changes mean for your business and how can we begin preparing for compliance before July 8th. It's getting closer. So if you have any additional question after today's webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to your DHL representative. Our team will be happy to assist you. Thank you once again for your participation. We wish you a wonderful day and we look forward to seeing you at our future customer webinar. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you,
Thank you,
Tiffany.
everyone. Appreciated your time.
Papovi.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mike. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Tiffany.